All right, guys, we're going to try to get going here and give you guys time to give your full presentation. First thing we have to do is adjourn from executive session that we were in. Could I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
All right, all those in favor of adjourning from executive session, please say aye. Say aye.
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 Thank you. Okay, we are in a study session for the Chandler High School IB process, or progress, rather. Folks, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Jackie Hartrick, and I'm the IB Diploma Coordinator from Chandler High School. And we have Courtney Kemp, who's our Career Program Coordinator, and Patricia Bedrogi, who is our MYP Coordinator. So we have three of us here. So we're going to walk through with you. IB is coming in February, actually on Valentine's Day, to evaluate our school on how our progress for the last 5 years and where we're headed. And so what we had to do was we had to upload a bunch of information to them, and that is what is in your binders in front of you. So if it looks daunting, it was. Took a little bit of work, but it's all there. So we did hear back from them today, and everything looks good that's in there. So that's a plus as well. So what we're going to do today is kind of walk through. We're not going to have you thumb through that and look at it as we go. If you want to, or you see something you want to look at, you can. It's yours to look at as you need. We're going to walk through kind of what the program is, because I know some of you are new and maybe don't know what it is. Some of you are seasoned at it and some not. So we'll walk through that and let you know. And then we'll also talk about the programs that we have, as well as the actual philosophy of teaching and that goes with the program. So that's kind of where we are. So, okay, perfect. So the first thing is IB, they have a mission and a legal status. They are a nonprofit based out of Switzerland. And what they do is they have, I think through the Swiss, they determined all their philosophies based on the Act of Foundation approved by the Swiss authorities. So I think it came into being because they needed some uniform educational system internationally. And so it got built from there, and it's just become bigger and bigger as time has gone on. So they have core values. You'll see those on the right-hand side. They have a mission, just like Chandler Unified does, just like Chandler High School does. They have a mission. And they partnership with all the different schools throughout the United States and overseas. They have a reputation for high standards. They're actively involved with the stakeholders like us. They come and they are always asking us questions and having us interact with them. And then they're also all about international mindedness. Okay.
And you'll have to excuse me, I'm a teacher all morning, so I'm used to standing up and directing and walking around the room, so being in one place is really difficult for me, so I'm forcing myself here. So we're going to walk through just sort of what is an IB school. Chandler High School is what is called an IB World School. We are not a school with IB programs, and so that is a little bit different, and we're going to get into what that actually means. We do have those programs, but when we were adopted 40 plus years ago, we were adopted as an IB World School, and that's why we have that little placard right on the very front of our school that says that. So I'll talk a little bit about what some of that means, what it means to our student body, what we're really trying to get going on the campus. There are a few things that I think were a little lackluster for a little bit, and we're really committed to bringing those back around to the campus, because a lot of IB is just doggone good teaching. It is just good for our kids. And so we're going to get into that a little bit, and I'll tell you a little more about it in just a minute. The biggest thing with IB is this is really about continuity. And so it keeps all of the IB schools around the world focusing on the same skills, focusing on the same learner profile attributes. And then the content, it's very specific about what we're looking for with the content, but it allows students to really find that content in their own way. And so that's one of the big things that's very different. and this is not a rip on AP at all. I taught AP for a very, very long time. AP is a lot of, I always say this and they laugh at me, but it's memorization and regurgitation. I mean, you guys know what AP classes are. It's a lot of going through, getting all of the details, and then you test on everything. In IB, it's a little bit different because they're going to give you, when they test, they're going to test on a simple content standard. But then the students are going to show the scorers how they got there. How did they get to the final end of finding this answer? What did they work through in order to get there? And that's where the skill piece comes into play. So some of the biggest pieces you'll see on here is that we want our students to be internationally minded. That's a really big piece. We've had a lot of conversations in our classrooms, especially over the last week, but it's a lot of inquiry. We're trying to get the students to ask a lot of the questions. We may start them, but we want them to finish it. So that's a lot of what IB is really focusing on. We are looking at ingenuity, multidisciplinary skills, but again, we want to get our students and our teachers on the same page so that we're all really focusing on the same skills. And I mentioned to you guys about how we are an IB World School. So when we were adopted as an IB World School 40 plus years ago, first one, by the way, in Arizona, and the first one west of the Mississippi, just so you know. We also, little side note for you, but so what that basically means is that campus-wide, not just for our program classes, but campus-wide, we are wanting to focus on teaching skills to our kids. Teach our kids to be critical thinkers. Teach our kids to ask questions. Teach our kids how to ask questions so that that is a part of our curriculum all the time. And we really want that vocabulary to be the same in every single class. It doesn't matter if you are taking an on-level biology class or if you're taking IB psychology. If I walk in there and I say something about a learner profile, all of the kids on our campus should know what that means. If I go in there and I talk about skills, a very specific skill that we're focusing on, everybody on our campus should know what that means. So we really, really want to focus on that. And that's what makes us a world school, is that even if you're not in one of the IB programs, you're still going to know the language. You're still going to know the skills. You're still going to know what we're talking about. And you're going to know that we believe in you to be a thinker. We believe in you to be successful. And so a lot of what we're trying to focus on, especially post-COVID, is getting these kids to realize that they are something and that their opinion matters and their thinking matters, their critical thinking matters. And it's time to start doing that more and more. So post-COVID, we've really focused on, we're going to get this campus back to being the IB World School that it's supposed to be. So we do have programs, and we're going to get into those programs here in just a few minutes so you can see what those are. But what we want you to really understand is that the vocabulary is campus-wide. That's what it means to be an IB World School. We're really excited. Our principal is approved. We're getting some, oh, sorry. I'm sure you know Greg Milbrandt. Sorry. Here's our principal. But he's approved for us. We're doing some really neat signage and stuff on campus again so that when you walk into the doors of Chandler High School, you're going to see what it means to have learner profile attributes. Kids are going to see that. We have posters up in every single classroom on the entire campus now, and we do monthly focus attributes that we look at. So we talk about it with the kids. We do really silly, dorky videos that they get to see. So we're using that language, and so we're able to really get that verbiage across so that it is, again, it's consistent and everybody will recognize it. So that's when we look at being a world school, and you see that on some of your paperwork, that's what it means. Can you tell I'm a teacher and I talk too much? Sorry. Okay. Here's your continuum.
So, like Courtney was saying, you know, the IB program differs so much from a lot of other programs that we see in schools throughout the country and throughout even Arizona and Chandler Unified. This is different because it's a full continuum. It's not just a program within Chandler High School. It is a whole design continuum to develop the child as a whole. And it starts at 3 years old, preschool. That's when the IB program really starts to focus on developing those skills, that critical thinking, that international mindedness, that self-reflection. it starts from a very young age, and it's designed to help them grow and learn as a community, and then learn and grow individually, and then ultimately prepare them for college and career readiness, which is one of Chandler's mission statements, right? Like, that's our goal, and that's one of the reasons why this program is so successful with our students, because it does focus so much on the college and career readiness piece, but we've been building that in students from such a young age. The primary years program, hopefully you guys have heard a little bit from Anderson Elementary, but they're the school in our district that does offer that. Middle years program is kind of in an interesting limbo situation. Chandler High School picks up middle years program in 9th grade, but the program technically goes from 6th grade to 10th grade. So every single 9th and 10th grade student at Chandler High School is in the MYP program. They are an MYP student, but as of right now, we don't have any schools in district that connect that 6th grade at Anderson High School to 9th grade at Chandler High School. So when they come in, we have a little bit of gapping to fill. So we're working to try and establish some kind of bridge, just to kind of keep that solidarity throughout the continuum. And then once they become juniors and seniors, they graduate from that middle years program, they can choose to go on to the diploma program or the career program. And we'll talk a little bit more about the difference between those. Primary years program, I'm not going to talk about that a whole lot because, like I said, that's elementary side. So that goes pretty much from pre-K up to 6th grade, developing and honing those initial skills for young learners. But the middle years program, that's when students really start to do a lot of self-reflection. It has a capstone project where students complete something called the personal project. At the end of the year, you all will receive an invitation to our personal project showcase. And basically, students have an opportunity to do some kind of inquiry project. There are requirements of a certain number of hours. It does have to be something that benefits the community as well. Again, that international mindedness, global perspective. And as part of that, they are going to then, once they complete the middle years program, they can choose to continue on to the diploma or the career program. And I'll let Jackie explain a little bit. Oh, okay. All right. So Courtney will explain the career program.
So the career-related program, this is a fairly new program that the IB has brought into fruition, and I happen to love it. It's the one that I focus on a ton. I also am the elected Arizona IB schools representative for the state of Arizona for the career program. So I help manage all the other schools in the state that have the career program. So it's really nice to be able to kind of be on the in on what's coming down from international level and then the state to the school. I don't know if any of you, well, actually I know several of you because I gave you a tour in the culinary room, a few of you guys not too long ago, but we have, and I'm slightly biased, so I apologize for those that are in here that don't know this, but Chandler High School, I have taught in other districts, has probably the best CTE program in the entire state. We are exemplary in what it is that we offer to our kids. We have great teachers, we have great opportunities, and so this coming out from IB has been terrific for us. What this allows our students to do is to look at both college as well as career readiness while still maintaining the rigor of IB. So with the career program, what we're looking at is, I'll start talking with them their sophomore year, but by their junior year, they're gonna make a commitment and they are gonna look for a career pathway. So they're gonna look at one of our CTE pathways. We have 11 of them that we offer at Chandler High School. Most schools that have career programs offer 1 to 2. We have 11. So what that is it's gonna be looking at a 2-year program. They need to be in year 1 and year 2 of that career pathway. This is also a great way for us to promote our CTE programs and to make sure that they get their certification at the end. As you all know, with the CTE, they have to complete that full 2 years in order for us to also get some of that benefit and for them to get their certification. So it's a way to also promote that with our kids to stay in those CTE programs for 2 years. In addition to that, they're also going to still take 2 IB classes. The nice part with this is they get to choose whichever IB classes they want to take. If they want to take IB psychology, they can. If they want to get into IB math analysis, they can. Wherever their specialty is, wherever they feel the most comfortable and they want to challenge themselves the most, those are going to be the 2 courses that they're going to test in. They're also going to take what is called a personal and professional skills class. And as you're reading every single page of those binders, you'll see somewhere in there, there is also a whole description of that personal and professional skills class. But what it really focuses on is helping our kids to understand how to make ethical decisions. We don't teach them what's right or wrong. That's for them to decide. That's a decision that we are going to steer clear of. But we want them to be able to make those decisions. So we help to push them. We help them to look at their career pathway. We help them to understand that there's ethical dilemmas all over the world. And then they're going to also do service projects with that. I actually had a student that was in the career program. His CTE pathway was in computer science. And he decided, he was from India, and he decided that he wanted to do something with his computer science pathway where he could send it back to this small village that was not too far from where his parents were born. So he ended up actually creating an attendance program. They were still taking attendance with paper and pencil. And so he created an attendance program in this computer science class, and he sent it over to that school so that they could use it. I mean, I can't even tell you what better way to show the connection of these kids getting something from their education and then being so proud to take that with them. He actually went on to school on the East Coast at a lovely school called MIT, if you've heard of it. So when we look at the career program, this is a really neat program because it helps our students to understand we have a lot of options here. Some of them are going to be to go to college. This will help to promote that. And some of them are to get into that career field. This is going to help to promote that too. So this is really a way that career pathway helps us to really understand and to help these kids understand that there are options for them. We're going to help them test so that they can get certification. We can help them get college credit if that's the angle that they're going to go in. But we're also going to make sure that they're getting that career certification by the time they're done. So again, it's mostly 11th and 12th graders. It's all written down on the description of what it is that we require, but I figured I gave you some examples that might be a little easier to understand. Our diploma program is our most rigorous program, our most robust program. Mrs. Hartrick is in charge of that, so she's going to give you a little information on that one.
Okay, so the diploma program is the most difficult program for students to get through. Miss Marsden, I had all her children. I taught IB calculus for like 20 years and had them all. The students they have to take all 6 classes of IB. They have to test in all 6 by the end of their senior year. So this is also just junior and senior year. In those 6 tests, 3 of them have to be at a higher level. 3 of them have to be at a standard level. So that makes them be able to choose which ones they want to focus on. Sometimes some kids want to do all higher level. I tell them that's not a good idea. And they argue with me, but it's okay. They need 3 standard and 3 higher. And IB's good about saying, no, this is really what's good for you to do. So that's a good thing. We also have what's called a theory of knowledge class. That's where they study knowledge. And they have to do it over a whole year. We break it up. We do a semester their junior year and a semester their senior year. But it's a place where, they maybe put up a picture and they say, what do you see in this picture? And then it becomes this huge debate. If you ever want to go to a class and listen to them, you'll sit there for hours and they'll be saying, no, I see a frog. No, I don't. And this whole thing, it's really interesting. They do a really good job with that. And then we also have the service component. It's called CAS, which stands for Creativity, Activity, and Service. So it gives them different ways for them to get service time. So like creativity is where they have to actually create something. And so anything that's creative. Last year we had a student do a mural at a shelter for animals on a wall and did that as part of her service project. Activity is anything that gets them moving. And I have to remind them it has to be something you've never tried before. So I always tell the boys, go take yoga. And they just look at me like I'm crazy. But try something that you've never done before. Don't go do something. The whole idea is to try different things and get out there and learn what it's like to be out of your comfort zone. And then service is just like we would do service anywhere. They can go to the food bank or help at school, clean up around campus, things like that. It is not based on hours. We don't say you need 100 hours. It's based on learning objectives. They have 7 learning objectives that they have to reach at least once, but most of them reach them 4 or 5 times. So when they pick a project, they have to pick a learning outcome. Then they have to go and do it and then explain how they met that outcome. So it's a little bit different than just saying you need 100 hours. It makes them have to actually think about what they did. Why did you go cook food? Why did you feed the homeless? What did you see from that? What did you learn from it? So, and it's a core piece of the diploma program. If they don't do the CAS stuff, they don't get the diploma. So it's, they could do all those tests, they could be great at all that stuff, but they have to do the other pieces. So it makes it so it's a whole student involved, everything involved. So these students who get the diploma, what they get is an IB diploma on top of a Chandler High School diploma. And then when they go to colleges and they say, I have an IB diploma, the college is like, yes, this is great. I had a student go to USC, and USC has this 30 for 30. If they get 30 points, they get 30 credits. So she started as way into a sophomore year. I mean, she'll probably be graduating from college in a year and a half. So just really good stuff for them, and it's great ways for them to get scholarships, all sorts of things like that. So it's for those students who want to do the work, it pays off in the end. I think that's it. I think that was it for that. So it goes on a point system. That's a little too much to kind of explain, but if you ever want to know, happy to sit down with you and explain how that works. Okay?
When can we ask questions?
Yeah. Who says? Yeah.
When can we ask questions?
Yeah.
You want me to wait? I don't
Yeah.
mind.
Go ahead.
So I've often heard, believe it or not, I was here when they started IB. That's scary. But I had no clue what it was when I was 30 years old. But so what I really noticed, when we had one student show up and he had a perfect test score on math in one of the, I don't know which AP or what it was, but he had no communication skills. And I remember sitting out in the audience and saying, we failed this kid. Yeah. So what is done in IB to help him with that P?
It's all about communicating. It's all about expressing themselves. There's a lot of writing, much more writing than any of the other classes. When they do a test, no multiple choice. It's all write out, explain, show us what you know, that kind of stuff. A lot of writing. If you ask the kids, they'll tell you that too. So they're very good at explaining and.
So they have to present and work on their communication skills and so forth?
Yes, all the time. Yep.
So the other thing I've heard over the years is they have no life outside of IB.
Yeah.
How is that? Is that accurate?
No, not necessarily. I think sometimes it's time management skills on their part, but we have students who are in sports. We have students who do other activities outside. We had a professional cheerleader or whatever last year. She was always gone. I think they have to learn how to manage their time if they want to do different things outside of the program.
Okay, thank you.
I have to kind of piggyback on that a little bit. With IB on the campus, there are multiple programs. So we have the NYP.
Try to use the mic if you can, so if anybody's listening, they can hear too.
No problem.
All right.
Sorry. We have multiple programs on the campus. So NYP is a program, career program, diploma program. Anybody can take an IB class. So, for some of these kids that say you have no life outside of it, I'm an IB teacher also. So I teach IB psychology on the campus. And I'll use my third hour as an example. In my third hour class, I have 30 plus students that are all taking IB psychology. Probably in that class period, 7 are doing the full diploma program. But the others are just wanting to challenge themselves. So some of the kids that are doing the full diploma, there is going to be a little more of a time commitment, but most of those students know that going in. Yeah, they do. So they are prepared to go in for that. They want to push themselves for that. But being that we're an IB school, I can have any kiddo walk into my room any year, and I'm going to work with them. And I'm going to help them. And I love that you use that communication skills one, because that's a big one for me. I have a hard time knowing that we're graduating kids and they're going to walk out and have no idea how to talk to an employer, how to talk to a professor. So I agree with you completely. I think that is a really big piece. So I know Tricia was just going through and skipping through, and we'll talk about it in a minute, but one of the core skills that we look at is communication skills. And that specific piece I think is important. So as far as the time management, the diploma program is a little bit heavier. I'm not going to lie and say that it's not. It is a little bit heavier. But anybody can take any of these IB classes. So it's open to the entire campus. So for those, it could be anyone that's taking any class involved in anything. I mean, I've had the student body president the last 4 years in my class. So, and they're involved in most things. So.
To just add in on that point too, when it comes to the workload of the diploma program and everything, that is really designed to help students pretty much knock out their freshman year of college. Yeah. So when you're talking about the workload, it's not that this is on par for just a rigorous high school program. It's that basically these kids are seniors knocking out their freshman and in some cases even credits of their sophomore year of college because they're working in that rigorous and that far ahead of a program. So it's not going to be a lot of them and it's not the majority, but it is a special, very academically motivated group of students who do take on that workload.
Is there a difference between the quality of scholarships they get between the two programs?
Between career and diploma?
Mm-hmm.
I would say yes. I think the diploma students tend to get more than the career.
And I have a question. Do you guys know how many kids come from outside of your area or outside of district to come to the program?
Yeah, we have quite a few. We actually go to the charter schools and recruit and do our little song and dance for them. We get a lot of people from like Legacy and some Tempe schools and Great Hearts, and they come here. So we do go search for them and bring them in for sure. But and we get a lot from Willis Junior High. They come from the STEAM program over there. So we get them.
It does seem like
32%. Yeah, 32% are open enrollment students. Now, are they all IB? But a lot of them are. A lot of them are. Yep. I was going to say, oh, and as she was saying, so we have these programs, but we also have just IB course students who just want to take an IB course. They can, and we do sign them up for that. But they have to do all the work that a diploma kid would have to do in that class, and they have to test. So it's not just they're going to sit in there and do anything. They're going to do what everybody else is doing. And they can't get college credit depending on what the tests they take and that kind of thing. Okay. Any more questions? Okay, good.
Well, yeah, I mean, as long as we're doing questions.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I want you to finish your presentation.
Oh, it's
but,
okay.
So the entire student body is subjected to this environment, I guess? But only certain students are actually enrolled in one of the three programs?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
What is the enrollment of kids in the actual programs?
Right now we have, I think, 35 in the diploma program, 66 in the career program, NYP.
Technically, every 9th and 10th grade student is part of the program, so we have roughly 2,000. But as far as the ones that are dedicated, active, involved, attending meetings, we have just over 400.
Okay, so
There-
roughly
there's a-
500
there's a-
kids.
There's about probably 200 course students.
200
Just
course students.
taking a course, yeah.
Okay. Because the enrollment at Chandler is close to 4,000,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm having trouble understanding the difference between this and AP. Does Chandler High School also offer AP classes?
Yes.
Okay, so this is not a replacement, it's a,
No.
it's a choice. Okay,
Yeah.
good, very good.
Some students are in a course that could be considered AP or IB, and sometimes they'll test in both. I don't.
In fact, in the little cheat sheet that we gave you guys, I don't know, maybe a month ago, there's a comparison, there it is, yeah.
Yeah,
There's a
I saw
comparison
that.
between AP and IB. One of the biggest differences, AP is very, very class specific. Whereas IB is a program. So we're doing a lot more outside of only that class. AP, if you want to go and take AP US History, you're going to go and take only that class. You're going to take that test, and then you're done with AP. You're not done with IB.
Okay.
So I can explain to you a little bit more mathematically, because in math, if a kid takes AP Calculus, they test only on AP Calculus. It's just calculus, the whole test is calculus. For IB, when they test at the end of their senior year, it includes geometry, algebra 2, pre-calc, stats, calculus, all those things at the end of that year.
Okay. Cause the link I'm trying to make is to college credits, because you talked about that. That's usually some sort of dual credit program.
Right.
So I know the AP classes a lot of times count for that. The IB are
Same
also
thing.
accredited?
Yeah,
Okay.
there's a scale of 1 to 7 on the scores that students can get on the exam.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on how well they do on that and the college that they're going to, they will say, okay, if you get a 5 on this exam, we'll give you 3 credit hours in this area. So it depends on the colleges is what they take, but they take a lot of them. If you go out like to ASU or just Google IB transfer grades, it'll pull it up, and you can look and see, what did you take and what can I get? And what kind of
Okay, so it's
score.
not like the dual credit program, because those kids are actually enrolled over to
Yeah, dual
GCC,
credit
who
is you
hasn't,
pay for the
they have an
class.
agreement with
Yeah,
ASU.
you pay for the class through Chandler Gilbert, you're in the class.
Oh, you do?
Do all the work,
All
you
right,
get a
all right.
grade,
It's the same
you've
thing.
got the credit,
All right.
yeah.
The other, just to add on to that, AP classes, when you test and get that credit, the college credit, it's accepted in colleges and universities here only within the United States. If you're getting an IB college credit, it's accepted worldwide. So if they want to travel outside of the United States, we just had a student we were working with that's going to Canada, and her IB scores will transfer over to her schools in Canada. So it does give them a little bit more in terms of a global opportunity.
All right, I'm trying to move quickly, so I don't have much time, but
We're running out of time.
that leads into my next question about international exchange programs, because I know we have a lot of them here in the district. I don't know, I saw a list the other day, it's at least 9, maybe 12 kids from other countries going to our schools.
There's some German.
What
students
about
here.
the reverse of that? Do we send our kids through the IB program to other countries to go to school?
We have not.
Well, that would
IB
be,
doesn't have an actual student exchange program to it,
Ooh.
but any student who graduates or transfers, I'll give you an example. I used to work in an international school. We had students that were very transient, always coming and going. Military bases, anywhere near there, any student that has military family, if they're constantly being restationed. IB, one of their core values is that it's a consistent curriculum
transferable,
with
yeah.
internationally acknowledged credit and core values all across the world.
the point I'm trying to get to is, should you have an exchange program for something like this? And maybe that's the next step here, because if you really want real world experience, I mean, going to Japan, going to school is going to give you that. Okay.
If I may add?
Yeah, sure.
We actually have a policy of not having students in the district being out of country, just to clarify.
Is that right? Oh, okay.
We did have a student from, I think it was Sri Lanka, that came over here and was going to go to school here, was going to be a senior, she was a junior, and so she was in the IB program there. We got her in here, finished her year out, she got the IB diploma, and she graduated.
Okay.
So,
Well,
you know,
last
we're able to
question.
accommodate those people who come from out of country, and that's a
Okay.
plus as well.
So it's a one-way street, and I'll talk to Dr. Gilbert about that later. But
Okay.
so the very last question is, you know, getting kids active, and then just the thing I'm concerned about. And I hope we're not talking about political and social activism, because that really ramped up, and now it seems to be dying back down. And I don't think we really want to see too much of that anymore. So that's a no.
Physical activity, yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, movement.
All right. All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay, so we are running out of time, so I'm going to do this kind of just quickly. The district has a profile of a learner, and IB has a learner profile. These are pretty much the same as what the district has. So the district and IB mirrors each other. It's a great tool together, and a lot of those words are the same. What we're doing at school is we're taking one of those words a month and highlighting it so that students and teachers can talk about what does it mean to be a caring person? What does it mean to be an inquirer? You know, so what they're using that as a tool in their classroom right now, and that's one of the posters that we have up around as well. Okay. I don't know where I am now.
So this part, what Ms. Hartrick was just talking about, this is a really nice visual, I think, so that you can see that IB really does go right in line. There is really truly a continuum between what the district is really hoping to do with their core values, what it is that Chandler High School is really focused on doing, and then what it is that IB is really focused on doing. And all of these things really do work hand in hand. It makes so much sense to continue having this type of a program that we're really highlighting what these skills are and what it's like to have these true attributes. Just skipping through. Skills. You should have them. Here we go. This one's more important for you. Here you go.
So answering back to some of your other questions about, the skills, especially communication, one of the bread and butter pieces of IB across all the programs from 3 years old to graduating high school, it does focus on these skills and developing these skills in students. We often say we want kids to be able to be critical thinkers, teach them how to think for themselves, but how do they actually learn to do that? IB focuses in with the content across every subject area. We put an intentional focus on teaching kids how to do those skills, teaching them how to communicate, teaching them how to agree to disagree, teaching them how to do all of these different skills. And then we also have, so that's the approaches to learning, the student side of those skills. And the way it's taught is through these approaches to teaching, and that's what all the IB teachers, so every Chandler High School teacher is an IB teacher because they're teaching at some capacity 9th, 10th, 11th, or 12th grade students that are probably looped at some point into this program. And so every teacher is following these things. They're using inquiry. They're not giving students the answer and saying memorize it. They're having students come to the answer themselves through those skills. They're having them think on a global scale, think about the local community, the impact of why this matters to them, rather than just Bobby had 8 apples. They're thinking about, teamwork. What does that mean? They're differentiating the needs of learners to meet them at their baseline for skills. So really, it's the approach of how IB is done in the classroom on the student and teacher level to really hone in those skills so that students, no matter what career they do, even if it's a career that doesn't yet exist, they have the skills that they need to succeed in college or their future careers.
Okay, so again, IB's coming to Chandler High School February 14th to the 16th. They're going to want to meet with some of you. So we'll be talking to you about that, like who would like to be a part of that, because we get to choose who that is. So we want people.
So the IB people from Switzerland?
They come from all over. Who said that? they come from all over.
That's okay.
Where's that lady from? Last year in May, 2 of them. I don't know. They had somebody come and audit us during our testing in May. That was fun. She was from somewhere overseas. I can't even remember where she was from now, but yeah, she Ubered to all the different schools in the state of Arizona to check out their programs. I thought, wow. But anyway, so yeah, they come from all over. So they're going to want to talk to some of you, and if you're interested or think that might be something you're comfortable with, Barb is my first person, then let me know and we'll put you on the list. I know Greg's so excited to have them here. He's very, and they'll be here for 3 days. So we'll have them here for 3 days. And so that's it. So February 14th, happy Valentine's Day.
All right. Well, thank you for coming and presenting, guys. We have something coming up here right after this. Does anybody have any quick questions they need to get answers for before we go
Can I
on?
just make a couple comments?
Go ahead.
All 3 of my kids, as Mrs. Hartrick said, have been through the IB program, and it was, when you talk about, with the question that Mr. Worth said about, they heard they have no life, my kids were involved in swimming, both at the high school, in the high school club, or the high school team, plus a club team, and we're at practices 20 to 25 hours a week, in addition to doing the IB program, the diploma. All 3 of them did get their diplomas. And when we talk about credits, out-of-state school, I had one student that got, or one child that got 50 credit hours going into the college. So it was amazing. Great program.
Oh, Patty.
I'm going to jump in with a question really quickly here. I know we referred, because we're talking about Chandler's World IB program, which is amazing, and we referred to Willis children, but I was just curious, do we also see, I know we have the IB middle school program at Anderson also, do we see kids from Anderson choosing to open enroll into Chandler because of that?
Okay, so you want to answer that?
You can do it. I'll add on if I need to. Go ahead.
I think that Anderson Junior High is looking into doing the MYP program, but it is not fully functioning there right now.
Okay.
Is that good?
So with the, as we know, we had a presentation before
Yeah.
you all a couple of months, about a month ago, in regards to Anderson Elementary's a PYP program.
Right.
And so when they are ready, we're going to bridge the program at Anderson Junior High with a bridge program. We can't officially call it an IB program, but we'll bridge it for those students that want to be there so they get the likeness of the program with the language that they need and the electives that they need. And it'll be taught by a partial team, so those kids could be bridged into the MYP. So
And one thing to think about, our district, we're already paying for the MYP program. So adding those programs into Anderson Junior High, it's already paid for. So that program, we have already invested in, so it would really just be about how would we see it on that campus. So that part would be different, but there would not be an additional financial responsibility in terms of paying for that school to become an IB school. So something just to think about while you're looking at it.
Okay, and then really quickly, I was just wondering, for our kids at Willis that are in the STEAM program, does their experience differ in 9th and 10th grade compared to students who arrive and enroll? Or, well, I guess everybody is in it in 9th and 10th grade, I understand that. But I guess I'm asking if the students coming from IB at Willis's STEAM program, if their experience is different or it's all the same?
No, it's all the same. When they come in, they have to take at least one honors class. They have to do a world language. That's one of the big things about IB. I didn't say that during the diploma part. They have to have 4 years of a world language.
Oh, 4.
Yeah, and they do all those things. All those kids coming from that program already take that kind of stuff, so to them it's, and we get them in there and they do great. Yeah,
Thank
we have
you.
a lot of them. Yeah. Thank you.
Anybody
We
else?
love talking about IB, so feel free to reach out anytime you want.
All right, thank you very,
Or come by and
yeah.
walk
Thank you
around.
very much, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's a lot. Who is this?
So do we have to memorize these binders before we talk to the?
You to see what we uploaded in case you do it with us. You'll know.
There's a pop quiz next week, though. I hope you're ready.
All right, thank you, guys. All right, next we have a presentation on M&O override and bond review. Lana.
All right, well, Mr. President, members of the board, tonight myself and Tom Dunn are going to go over our M&O overview and our bond review for you today. A couple things that we're going to discuss is we're going to explain why we have to do it, the annual reporting requirements. We're going to talk about kind of the history of the override and a little bit about our override that we have in place. We're going to review the expenditures from the 2021 M&O override, which happened last fiscal year, and then the planned expenditures for this fiscal year. And then we're going to talk about 2015 bond, because the only thing we still have left out there, a couple buses that are still have not came in yet, but besides that, we've completely spent up the 2015 bond. And then we're going to go over the 2019 bond, because that is the bond that we're in the middle of right now. We're going to talk to you a little bit about how we plan for projects, the current projects that we've completed, and then ones that we're in the middle of, and then what we have left in the bond and the planning for that, as we will be presenting to a bond committee starting in the spring next year to potentially bring to you another initiative that might go on the ballot if the board chooses to put that initiative on the ballot. And then the last thing we want to talk about is just our planning process, to talk about what it takes and what our team does to decide how we're going to put projects together. We take the strategic plan, and we'll talk a little bit about what that process looks like for us. So a couple things, statute drives why we do this report. So that's probably the most important piece, is that ARS 15-481 Y and K are the requirements that tell us between September 1st and October 31st, we are to bring to our governing board a presentation to go over the expenditures and our override and our bond. And so that's why every year you can go back and look at our presentations if you want to for the past, but we do this once a year annually. The information is in our budget and in our annual financial report, but this is some more details related to our bond election and our override. So the M&O override is specifically, if you want to go look at statute, it's in ARS 15-481. As you know, last year we had a 15% in place for the 2022-23 year. We just wrapped up the annual financial report. That was part of that. It was from the 2021 voter approved pamphlet. And then also this upcoming year, the one we're in right now, fiscal year 23-24, it's also based on the 21 voter approved pamphlet. And we'll talk about how many years it's good for and when it would expire. The bond proceeds that are governed by statute, the statute's 15-481K, and again, we still have a tiny bit left to expense. We've already done the purchase orders. We're just waiting for those buses that you all know about. But besides that, we have spent the entire amount, and we'll talk about that. And then the 2019 bond. Future capital projects, we will be bringing back to you. We'll start that before the end of the fiscal year, and then we will bring back to the board during a planning session. We'll start discussing where we're at related to the bond. We'll go out to a citizens budget committee and bond committee, and then we'll bring it back to the board in the spring, and then in June, we'll ask the board to potentially call for an election, and it's the board's decision to call for that election and put that on the pamphlet, which would be in November of 24. So just a discussion about that. So a little bit about our override history here in
Just
Chandler
one
Unified.
thing.
Yes,
Lease purchase funds, can you just short version of that, please?
sure. So school districts are allowed to lease funds. It's like a bank loan from entities, and we've done that in the past. For example, we did that to start when we built Castile and Auxerre. We had a lease that we were able to start before we had a bond that was approved. And so we did the first lease over here on the East Valley, in the sense of we did a lease and then we were able to pass the bond and pay that lease
And you
off.
paid it off of bond proceeds?
did,
Okay,
yes.
all right. So you didn't lease funds yet? Okay.
We
all
did.
right.
We had a lease
That's
purchase,
fine.
yes.
That's fine, thank you.
All right, so our bond overview, our budget override was in 2003, we had a 10% override. And then we renewed that in 2008 with a 10% override. And then in 2013, we went from 10% to 15%. So the statute used to be where you could have a 10% override and then you could have a K3 override for 5%. Or you could have a combination override for 15%. So our district had a 10% but not a 5. And then in 2013, we decided to go after the 15% override and combine that. And then in 2017, we renewed that. We try to renew every 4 years in case we do fail. A good example was we actually failed in 2012, but we didn't have to cut because we were 1 year before the 5th year, which then you have to reduce by a third. So for us, we renewed in 2017. We renewed again in 4 years later in 2021, and then projected to renew in 24, if not 25. So. But it's important to know that. I think for the community, I think they think sometimes that an override it stacks on each other. It does not. When you have an override and then you renew that override, the existing one goes away and the new one takes its place. So we're just constantly asking for a continuation of our existing override. The statute does not allow you to go over 15%. You can't have a 16% or 20% override. You only can have 15%. You can have less, but ultimately, your statute is driven of what percentage we can actually have for our override. All right, so a couple things. Our 15% override was approved, effective years. It was approved, and the first year of the effective, the previous one was in 2016, 2017, and then that's when it began. And then in 2021, 22, the voters approved again the next override. So last year was our first fully funded year. Then our second year, which is the year we're in right now, is fully funded. Now next year would be our third year, and then our fourth year would be 24, 25. And then the last year would be in 26, 27. At that point, if we do not ask our voters to continue that override, we would have to cut our override, the amount we receive, by 1/3, so we'd only be funded at 2/3. And then in 28, 29, we would only receive 1/3 of that capacity. And then in the year 29, 30, it would be completely gone. So it is good for 7 years, but only good fully funded for 5, and then it is phased down into 2/3 and 1/3 and then goes away. If it's renewed, like we say, we'll try to go back to the voters in 25, 26 if the board calls for that election, and ultimately if it was approved, then it would be replacing the existing one that we have now. It doesn't stack on each other. So again, the potential is to call for an election potentially in November of 25 or in November of 26. Again, we would have to bring that back to the board, and the board would have to vote to call for the election. So our pamphlet, and I apologize, on your sheet you're going to see there was a number that was not updated on here, but this is if you were to look at our voter pamphlet, the one that everybody gets in the mail, the official voter pamphlet, you can find this information back from 2021. During that year, the budget was the projected budget for the next fiscal year was $35 million approximately, and then the tax rate was $1.23. And that was pursuant to the 21-22 fiscal year. So that's where it was calculated. Now, today, obviously, we're past a couple years more as inflation has increased and the state increases our base support level. That's what the override is based on your RCL. And ultimately, our 22-23 budget for last year was the 15% override was $43,630,000, and the actual tax rate was $1.19. This year, our budget for 23-24 is $45,454,000. Again, it's 15% of the RCL, and the actual tax rate is $1.16 currently for this fiscal year.
So as state funding goes up, and we like that,
Yes.
you actually get a raise essentially on the override amount as well.
Yes, now sometimes that can go down. Like I've been in previous districts where even though the amount was going up, if your ADM goes down, for example, then if your revenue control limit decreases, it's based on your revenue control limit. So if you're a district that's growing and the base support level goes up, it's obviously going to increase. If you're a district that is just flat, but the base support level goes up, you're going to usually see an increase. But a lot of times, if you see a significant decrease in your ADM, then potentially it could go down compared to the amount that the inflation. But last year, as you know, we got a major increase from the state based on inflation, not just the 2%, but we got almost a 7% increase, and overrides are based upon the previous year, so that's why you're seeing that increase. So there's some other factors in there. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
All right, so
let's go back. So clearly our override next year is going to go down.
potentially could, yes.
Okay.
Depends on, again, what the base support level, because it's based on your base support level and the dollar amount for the new fiscal year, but your ADM from the previous year.
Yeah, but you lose that much ADM.
Yes, definitely. All right, so the voter pamphlet for 2021, the main initiatives that were approved by our voters were maintain respectable class sizes, which we're very proud of our class sizes compared to competitors. We have, as you know, 22 charter schools within or around our area and 11 private schools, and also our competitors in school districts across the East Valley. So we're always trying to maintain that class size. That's important for us. Attract and retain qualified teachers. As you know, we want to be not only retain our qualified staff, but we want to attract them. So it's important to have that salary schedule that's competitive. We want to make sure we enhance our technology services throughout. Not only do we have to have capital needs, but we have technology M&O expenditures for services. We also wanted to make sure we were implementing our programs related to Journey 2025 and our strategic goal. We wanted to make sure we didn't have to, without the override, you would have to reduce specific programs. Not saying the program that you just heard about earlier, but we have lots of wonderful programs just like the one you saw earlier in our district that we're very fortunate to have. And because of our override, we've been able to have some of those specific programs. And so that's important for us without having to eliminate those programs. And then it's always important to provide professional development for our staff. As you know, we have 5,000 employees, not just teachers, but support staff too. And so some of that goes into supporting our staff with the override too. All right, so after, any questions? Do you have any questions about the M&O override before I start into bonds and talking about school facilities board or adjacent?
Len, more of a statement. Part of the reason for the override is when we compete against charters, they get $1,000 more per student. So does this keep us even?
Yes.
Or are they getting more revenue?
Sure. So charter schools, I think they get about $1,300 more in their what's called charter school additional assistance, and districts get what's called district additional assistance, and so that's equivalent to about $1,300. Our override, as you saw, was $45 million. We have 43,000 students, so that's a little bit over $1,000 per student. So it's not quite the same, but we are able to go after bonds, and they are not. So that is the difference in that piece. All right, School Facilities Board. So we have been fortunate, as you all know, to receive School Facilities Board money for some of our new schools. As you remember, Castile, we were able to build a portion of Castile with the School Facilities Board. Our new high school that's ACP Erie that is out on Gilbert Road. So we've been very fortunate. We also built our special needs facilities and our Chandler Online Academy. So we've also been able to add additional square footage to both Basha High School, Perry High School, and Chandler High School through the School Facilities Board as we were growing, because our secondary had been growing. But now our secondary is not growing. And so the School Facilities Board, we still are required, even though we're not growing. It used to be we turned it in our capital plan, and that dictated for them to use their demographer determined that our ADM was growing and that we would qualify for new space. But now, since we are not growing in those categories, ultimately, we still have to turn in the plan. It's due every year annually. It has to be submitted in by September the 1st, and so our board ultimately approves that plan. We update our student population information. It goes over what's happening with our enrollment. Now we discuss where we're at with enrollment. As you all know, we showed you the demographic reports related to that. It goes over new construction. We didn't request any new construction related to that growth. And then we report our renovation expenditure. So that's a requirement by statute that we do, and that we do every year.
So
it
on
also
the,
helps us update our square footage.
so on the school's facility board, I mean, we don't get a big portion of that, we know.
No, we don't.
But what I did see in the report is we got about $50 million, which I was surprised. But just for the public, so the public knows, almost all of that went to repairing roofs at 3 of our schools and a couple HVAC units, repairs that were very expensive. And sounds like renovating, the old building that Chandler High School had, they painted it or whatever, it's an old building.
Yes, we didn't get, I wish we got 50 million in school facilities board.
15.15.
Not in the building renewal amount, what you're talking about
Oh.
is specific, is related to the roofs and the different pieces that we receive. And over a period of time, we've gotten school facilities board money related to the new high school too, so that would have been a part of that piece.
But that wasn't part of the last year's budget, that was the year before, is that right?
Right,
Yeah.
but now
I'm
there's
just
only
talking about last year.
$190 million approximately for school facilities board building renewal for 225
Mm-hmm.
school districts. So as you know, our bond is bigger than that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, roofs and HVAC are top priorities for the school facilities board, and we've been very fortunate to receive money for those things, especially for our roofs. And
The
our
reason I
HVAC.
brought that up, it was a question that was brought up to me. It says, why don't you get all your bond money out of the school's facilities board?
Yeah.
Because there isn't.
Yes.
money
great,
for us
no,
there.
Great point. Thank you for bringing that up. The only thing that the school facility board has money for is new construction and then building renewal. And new construction is based on growth, and you have to do that. That's how we got funding for Castile, for 4 other high schools. And then the building renewal is where they're replacing the roofs, the HVACs, or those emergency things that are breaking in we need for health and safety for our schools. But there's no formula in legislation that allows to replace a school. There's nothing for just renovations to upgrade things. That's not in the formula whatsoever. And so that's why bonds are so important, is because all we get is a small amount in our capital, which is what Mr. Worth was talking about. Charter schools get a lot more in that area, we get a very small amount in capital. So we rely on bonds from our communities to, finish our facilities at the level that our community expects, to renovate our schools, to keep up with technology, to buy buses, because besides capital, there's no other fund for that.
Okay, so for this coming fiscal year, I don't think we asked for anything, is that correct?
No, we're not asking for anything
Okay.
next fiscal year.
All right.
No. I wish we were still growing, but we are built out, our birth rates are down, and ultimately, we have a step-up market, as you know, all the things we've been talking about. So we know we're going to be going down slightly and decreasing based on the things we've been discussing.
So you're not asking for next year because you know you're not going to get anything?
Right, we can't. We are asking, we still have a request out right now, for example, and Tom will talk about it. The roof at Chandler High is still, we put an application for that, it's $8 million. So we're asking for building renewal money because that's what we qualify for, but we don't qualify for any new school construction whatsoever because of growth.
We have how many, like 4 million square feet or something like that?
We have 5.5 million square feet.
So 5.5 million square feet. So there's constantly roofs, air conditioners, parking lots, fields. There's always something to work on then.
There is.
Bathrooms,
And our
yeah.
preventative maintenance plan
Bathrooms
alone
for
is
sure.
millions of dollars just to maintain just the basics. Absolutely. All right, so a couple things. Tax rate comparison. We always like to just show and explain a little bit about the tax rate. Our primary tax rate is actually, majority of that is set by as you know, by legislation. They set what's called the qualifying tax rate. And the only thing that a board can actually approve that's above that qualifying tax rate is, for example, for our board would be adjacent ways. And that would be added on. So the difference that you're going to see between school districts' primary tax rate is related to what the legislation sets, and then plus typically the adjacent ways. And you can see there's a couple communities that have a bigger adjacent ways budgets, and obviously they have less commercial properties than, and they are mostly bedroom communities sometimes. Like, for example, Queen Creeks is more of a bedroom community, does not have as much commercial property, so you're going to see some of those rates differ because of that. It's based on your assessed value, how much you have to collect, and then that average. The maintenance, or the M&O override, again, majority of these districts have a 15% override in place, but ultimately it changes, it's a little bit different on the overall, you can see tax rate, and again, that's based on the value of your community. If your community has less assessed value, it's going to cost more to the taxpayer in that community. We're very fortunate in Chandler that we have a strong commercial assessed value and residential. So you're going to see it usually higher amounts of tax rates in communities that are more of a bedroom community and less commercial property. Capital override, there are a couple school districts who have a capital override in place. We do not have that here in Chandler. So you're seeing those tax rates. And then bonds. And again, bonds are based on that secondary value. So again, based on assessed value. So if you have a lot of commercial and residential value, then that typically is, it's going to be spread out, that tax rate over that value. So if you have less of that and you're like a poor secondary market, your tax rate's going to be high. It also depends on how much money you're asking for in those areas. And it's part of the reason that a lot of remote rural areas can't pass bonds is because they're very secondary poor. They don't have a lot of a tax base in those communities. And so therefore, it's a big burden to the very few houses and commercial properties in those communities. We're very fortunate, again, here in Chandler, that we have a great commercial base and residential base. So overall, our tax rate is slightly above Gilbert's, but lower than the other neighboring school districts. So the 2015 bond is still presenting on that because we have one outstanding purchase order, and it's for our buses, but everything else has been reported. It's the same as we reported last year. This was our overall voter-approved initiative for the 2015 bond. We had about $150 million in construction and renovation projects, $17 million in transportation, $2 million in administration, furniture, and equipment, $4.7 million in administration, construction, improvement. And remember, it's not just when it says administration, it means anything that's not in the classroom. So if it was at the IRC or the warehouse or support services or food service, it had to come out of that pot.
Lana,
And then non-administration.
so do we have to use the word administration?
We do. We're required by statute. If it's not in the classroom, you got to use that word.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Just for the public, F&E or
Yes.
FF&E, can you
Furniture.
explain that so people listening
Yes.
here?
Great comment on that too. So F&E is furniture and equipment. So we are required to break that out. Furniture and equipment, when you have a bond, you're required to pay off furniture and equipment within 5 years, where ultimately do not have to pay off we structure our renovation projects for 20 years to be paid off, but ultimately furniture and equipment are in a different line item because you pay those off within 5 years by statute. Oh, all right, sorry, I went one too many. All right, so here is how we expense that 2015 bond. We ultimately spent $17.3 million in transportation, $139 million in construction. The furniture and equipment for schools, that's why it says non-administration, we spent $19.5 million. We spent $2,800,000 in admin, furniture and equipment, and then our bond selling costs were $388. And when people see that admin, furniture and equipment, majority of that money was our Visions accounting software system that we purchased and went from Business Plus to Visions. It was a little over.
Yeah, I was going to ask, are like computers and monitors and printers in the F&E?
Yeah, there was
roll?
some in that, but the majority of that was our software cost for Visions. When we
Software.
upgraded, it was over $2 million.
Okay, thank you.
That's our financial system that we use to track our $600 million worth of expenses and revenues that come into our school district. All right, so the only thing we have left, as you know, are the buses, and we've received the majority of those this July and August, and we just have a few that are still outstanding. All right, so let's talk about the 2019 bond. This is the one that we're in the middle of right now. I'm very thankful to our voters for approving. The bond was $290 million, has $25 million of transportation, and like I said, we're fortunate to have this. If you go out to rural Arizona, they're limping along with their buses. We have been able to, buy new buses because of our bond. There is not enough money typically in the M&O or capital. We would have to take from salaries to pay for buses if we did not have it. So we're very fortunate for that. We had $225 million worth of construction, either new as we finished our high school and we finished Rice Elementary, but also renovation projects. And now it is obviously doing Galveston, building the Galveston rebuild. Non-administration F&E, this is where furniture and equipment, this is instructional, this is related to furniture and equipment within our schools, but also a big portion of our technology. Over 2/3 of that is our technology. That is where the computers are at in this bond. The administration, construction, and improvements, we have $5 million in there, and then $3 million for administration and furniture and equipment. And again, like Mr. Worth said, it doesn't mean that it's like for this building and administration. That can be any of our support service areas that are not instructional. We have, as you know, we have a warehouse, we have an instructional resource center, we have a support service where all of our maintenance are at, and ultimately here in our facilities and technology where we have a hub.
So not all this $190 million has actually been spent. Some of it is in reserve.
We're gonna go over
reserve's not the right word, but a lot of it seems to be allocated to general future projects, and then some of it's just unallocated. It's about $80 million or so. So look, it sounds like the actual spending, checks that we wrote is about $210 or so.
We're going to go over that in just a minute.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay, so a couple things, and that's why you have an Excel document that's attached, or if the viewers saw it. This is our internal document that we have that documents every single project that we have, and I just wanted to explain a little bit about that document. We have the voter initiative kind of approval of where we started with where did we originally think we were going to spend that $290 million. So you can see these are the areas that the voters approved it. They approved it in transportation, construction, furniture and equipment, and then administration, construction, and administration, furniture and equipment. So that's where the $290 million. And so you have the actual line where we ultimately had put sums of where we thought we were going to spend that. Again, we planned for that, and that's what our intentions originally are. And then, as you know, when we go through it, as things change, we come back and make revisions to that. Now, within that, the law says that you can use over 10% of the bond, which is $29 million of that, and you can move that within categories. So you're going to see that sometimes we spend more in one category and we'll move money from another category to help fund the projects that we have. And so that's going to be important. The second thing that you're going to see is we talk about completed projects and near completed. So these projects that we have listed right here, we have almost $200 million worth of completed projects. Now, we did have a lease purchase and ultimately that we paid off, and we had the school facilities board, new construction, things that are that we get reimbursed, adjacent ways, things like that. But ultimately, we have spent $200 million on construction items in the categories that are listed that you can see through here. And Tom is going to get up in just a minute and talk to you about the projects that completed last year. We did a presentation last year on the projects completed the year before, but we're just going to talk about what we finished in 22-23. But ultimately, we've spent about $200 million. Now, all of those are projects that you've seen, that you've either approved through RFPs or the guaranteed maximum price contracts that we brought to you, or that we're about to expense. There's a few that we haven't cut the check, but we have the purchase order for, so that's in that column. Planned or PO pending is ones we've made decisions about, but we're still waiting. It might be an RFP that's out or a contract that's out, or we're finalizing something right now on estimates that Tom has, but we've gotten the green light to go ahead and go, but we just don't have a purchase order yet. But we are planning for those within the next year or so. That's where you're going to see the planned pending POs. And then the next one are projects scheduled for 23-24, and this is important. This $75 million is important, and we'll have one slide where we talk about this in a little bit. But we are going to be very careful. We have projects outlined for what we want to do and where we know we need to spend that, but we also have to be very conscientious that if our board decides not to call for a bond, or if the board calls for a bond and it's not successful, that we have enough money to make sure we can maintain our preventative maintenance plan, and we can make sure we have safe buses that are out there, and we can make sure that we maintain a minimal of our technology replacement plan that we have. So we're very careful with how we're strategizing that until we know we're successful in a bond election, so we have that prepared, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Alternative funding on this list for the $20 million that's here, some of that school facilities board, where we are hoping to finish and be approved, we believe, for the Chandler High School roof. We have a couple other roofs on there. And then we also have our adjacent ways money, which was the Rice Elementary School that we will be finishing that stoplight at. Also the transportation loop, the road that will be going around it. And then the Galveston utilities that we'll be pulling for about $2 million. We'll talk about that in just a minute too. So between school
Question.
facilities board and adjacent ways. Sorry about that.
So this is all on our bond, so why is the adjacent ways hitting the bond?
So it ultimately reduces what we spent over here on completed projects.
Okay,
Because that
okay.
position is
So
funding
you're just
source.
going to get paid back for it?
Right. And since they have two funding sources, we still try to track it here and show you that. So
Okay.
that's important for us. And it's important as we are having discussions every month and we review it with our team. For example, we're going over how much money do we have from the bond, how much money do we have sometimes in capital, how much do we have in adjacent ways, and then ultimately we track it through here. So that's how ultimately we have a plan for the full amount. That's why you see overall the remaining amount of $0. But again, we'll talk about this. This amount can be changed, and there's details on here. So if you want to go through the details, you are welcome to look through all of that. If you ever have any questions, my door is always open. Feel free to stop by or give me a call, and I'll review any of that with you. So what's left? Overall, we have about $7 million left in transportation. In construction, we have about $18.5 million. In furniture and equipment, we have $18.5 million. In our furniture and equipment, we have about $21 million. And then overall, non-admin furniture and equipment, we have $28 million total. All right, so a couple things. I'm going to turn it over to Tom to talk. Yes.
Real quick, now the 3-year rule still is in place,
The 3-year rule.
where you have to purchase stuff within the 3-year period?
Yes, so once
Pay
you
for it, I mean.
once you sell those bonds, you have to ultimately utilize those dollars within that period.
No,
of time.
I'm thinking
Is that
like
what you're talking about?
textbooks. You have to,
Say that
you
again?
have to pay them over a 3-year period. Textbooks,
We have to pay those over 5
5 years. okay.
years, yes. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Tom and let him talk about projects completed in 22-23.
Members of the board, good evening. This is not a comprehensive list. This is just a list of some major projects that were completed last year. Just wanted to highlight a few. You can see that some of these are preventative maintenance, like our flooring and carpet replacement that we did at 7 or 8 schools this last year. Some are building enhancements, like the marquees that we completed at the junior high and high schools. And then others are for safety, which is in the bond approval as well, where we improve fencing at 10 schools. We also did Seroports at all of our elementary schools except one, which is Knox, which we'll be looking to make further improvements potentially in a future bond. It's a pretty complicated campus that needs some renovations to their kitchen, their NPR, and their front office. We've saved that for a future bond, but we've added Seroports at all of our elementary schools. We also made improvements at Hamilton High School in their kitchen remodel, allowing for greater efficiencies, increased student seating in conditioned spaces. Done roofs. We did a roof at Central Kitchen. We've added some bleachers for our fans at Basha High School and Castile High School. And then we also made significant technology upgrades at many of our sites. So that's completed projects in 22, 23. And then our in progress, so projects that we've started but haven't yet completed: Galveston Replacement School, which you're aware of, Central Kitchen remodel, which is very close to finishing, classroom addition at ACP Middle School. We're about a week away from certificate of occupancy there. The Hope Institute, Performing Arts Center lighting upgrades, many LED lighting upgrades that we started last year that we're continuing into this year. We did tennis courts and concession building out at Castile High School. We have marquee replacements now starting at the elementary schools. And then we added 6 PE play structures across 6 elementary sites that did not have PE play shade structures. So those are some ongoing projects. I know Joel mentioned restrooms. We did Bologna, Tarwater, Conway, and Hamilton High School restroom upgrades, planning for that Chandler High School roof replacement, and some fire panels, which are preventative maintenance at Bogle Junior High School and Fry Elementary. And then our last one, our future planned projects. So projects that we're planning, lighting upgrade at Knox would be considered in our future bond as well. But restroom upgrades at Bash Elementary. We've got that traffic signal at Rice Elementary. Working on a warehouse remodel to provide conditioned space for our warehouse staff. We've got the road around transportation, the half street that we're needing to make improvements on. We have our turf fields, so we've got one more GMP that you'll see in November for our final GMP for our turf fields. Security cameras and server upgrades, and then we have the field house at Basha High School. So these are some planned projects that we will be using 2019 bond funds for.
I thought Bogle was already done. Was that kind of put on the side for a while, or?
Bogle, which one?
Bogle Junior High School roof?
Roof, it's in assessment right now with the school facility board. Yeah.
Okay.
You one that kind of caught when I was going through the list was this traffic signal at Rice, which of course we need. I mean, I'm not saying we don't need it.
Yes,
But the price tag was like $1.2 million for a traffic signal.
that's correct.
And I had a hard time understanding that.
Yeah.
120,000 I could have got, but 1.2 million, how's that work?
That's what they cost now.
Yeah, so it is what they cost, unfortunately. So when we built Rice, 148, which is the street just to the west, and Ocotillo is, we found that there's a need for a traffic signal, working with the town of Gilbert, and it's an intersection that is also Chandler, so we had to work with the city of Chandler. And when we are required to put a traffic signal in, we have to put the signal arms in at all 4 corners. So not just like our half street like we would normally do. We actually have to do the entire intersection. The problem was, at the time that Rice was constructed, the south side of Ocotillo was not yet improved. So the street across the street from Rice was not yet improved. So we couldn't put traffic signal arms in dirt, basically. It was still farm. And but I think it's Meritage Homes is come in there finishing the Waterston neighborhood. They've buried the SRP lines, and that intersection is now improved. So all 4 corners now have a sidewalk, and we can now put traffic signal arms in. And so we go back out for pricing 2 years later, and it is 1 point.
Yeah, I'm not questioning the need for it. I mean, clear need for it. I'm still having trouble saying that's just the way, how much it costs to do something like that. It seems incredibly excessive. So, I'm not a construction guy, but to put 4 traffic lights in, 1.2 million seems like a lot, but I guess it is what it is. So, okay, thank you.
Did Meritage have to make any contributions since they're developing that half street?
Not to the traffic signal, no.
It's aggravating. Did we have a warrant for a traffic signal in the traffic study when
No,
they
we
first
did
built
not.
the school?
We did not. So it was a school choice, which is why Meritage doesn't have to contribute. Yes.
Okay.
But we've got buses there that are needing to turn left on Ocotillo. We just felt like it was a safety issue, especially with parent drop-off and pickup.
And Tom, to follow up with that, I know in other adjacent ways type of projects, we've shared costs with the city.
Correct.
So in this case, it's 100% through the district, or will the city be contributing?
So on the Rice traffic signal, so Mr. Olive's question was the traffic signal warranted? So when we build schools, we have to do traffic studies. and they bring a traffic engineer. They look at the number of students that will be walking, number of students that will be driving and getting picked up, the buses we have coming out. They do a traffic study, how much traffic is on Ocotillo, and then they determine if a traffic signal is warranted by this study, saying if you build this school, it's required to put a traffic signal here. The traffic study said it's not warranted, but we felt it was a safety issue for our bus drivers and our parent pickup and drop off, that a traffic signal would be of benefit to the school, and so it's 100% our responsibility.
Is that going to be adjacent ways?
Correct, adjacent ways. As
Okay.
will be the half street around transportation, which we'll be working with the city of Chandler on that. So I will, we'll bring the GMP, we'll bring the pricing to you once we're close to pricing on the transportation roadway. City of Chandler has purchased the land just to the north of our central transportation facility. They will be making the half-street improvements adjacent to our half-street, so City of Chandler will do the work, we'll reimburse them, which we've done several times.
Quick question, I saw ACP courtyard was on there. Is that ACP high or is that?
High school, yes, yes.
So it's going to be something other than just concrete now?
Correct, that's what we're looking to do, yes.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yes, yes. Working with them right now, actually.
Okay.
You answered my question.
Any other questions?
Yeah, have you come to kind of the end of your presentation? Does anybody else have any
Lana's
questions?
got a couple more slides.
All right.
Thanks, Tom. Tom and his team do a great job. They meet with us on a regular basis to review not only what our projects are, but where we're at with those, and then planning for the future. So we're really fortunate to get to work together on each of these projects. All right, so it's important, I think, to talk about that last column that was in the little table that I showed you, because it is really important for us, as we have been talking about with you all, the reimagining process. We have about $20 million slotted between our elementaries, our secondaries, and our general renovation to give out $20 million, where we have 8 schools that we are working on. We've been in the middle of that process to reimagine and either update, but also work with our academic teams on where is that school going and what are we doing to that? Are we renovating them, bringing new furniture in? What are we doing? So we have about $20 million slotted for that. In the safety projects, we have about $4 million that we have set aside for safety projects that are coming for the future. We don't specifically have a project that we're bringing back to you right now, but that we potentially might need at a school or in an area that we make a decision on. So we have that earmarked and ready, but do not have, obviously, purchase orders or a specific project that we have right now for that. HVAC, we have a chunk in that for our HVAC. We do have a preventative maintenance plan, as you know, and we'll try to replace that. But as we come up to the bond election potentially in 24, depending on if that's successful or not, we're careful with that line item. Can we stretch it out a little bit longer, especially if the board doesn't call for it, or if they do call for it and it's not approved? We just need to make sure we're careful with that to make sure we can maintain our HVAC systems. Technology, we have a big chunk that's in that technology plan. As we brought to you the technology budget, we only have a small portion in capital that goes towards technology, and so we need to have a big portion of that we will be spending next year. We've rolled some of those purchase orders over from last year. For example, the flat panels, the IFB boards that we got approved back in the spring, part of that is rolled over as we finish that project over the next year or so. Transportation, and we still have a chunk left, as you saw, almost $7 million in fleet. As we're replacing, we'll continue to do that. We bring back to you once a year the buses that we're purchasing, and typically it used to take 6 months to 8 months to get those buses. Now it's taking a lot longer than that, but ultimately we're annually replacing our buses and our fleet of around 200. And then the last portion is our general renovations. In that line, we have a little over $20 million, I think it's $23 million in that line item. And that's kind of our area where when there's a project that we see at a school, when we have a health and safety issue, or they need something upgraded and we have to get on that project, or we see a need that we have that's going to impact that school, that's where we pull that line, pull it from that amount. But also we're keeping that line because, again, depending on if the board calls or does not call for a 24 election, we need to be careful with those dollars. If the board calls for it and it's approved, then we will slot the projects that we have been thinking about and targeting for the future, but we're going to be careful with those dollars. So again, it's just part of the planning process to make sure that we've got enough to maintain our schools, especially for health and safety, but also preparing potentially for that call for election in 24. All right, so overall, what does that annual capital planning process look like for our team? And you, as you heard from Tom, our team on our side of the house is myself, and I'm over the financial side. We have Colleen Flannery, who handles all of our technology needs. Tom works with all of our facilities and our transportation. So our team is really equipped with putting together the capital plan, but really it's not just our team. Obviously, we work with everybody to determine, we start with what are our goals for our district in that strategic plan, but then we work with the academic side of the house, so Dr. Gilbert and his team. We ultimately then, as we decide, they tell us where do they academically want to go. We make sure that the facilities and the technology and the equipment that we're purchasing meet those goals that they have for us. And then also, we work to make sure then, how do we make sure that that building or that technology is used? That's where our HR department and our professional development department work with our staff to make sure they're trained and ready to maximize the use of those new furniture, equipment, or facilities so that we can get those educational outcomes that we want. So it's an entire team process led by Frank, but ultimately each of our groups working together to meet those academic outcomes that we're all shooting for. With that, there's a number of initiatives that we're looking for. We are always addressing at the same time that we're addressing our preventative maintenance needs. We're also looking at how do we replace schools or renovate schools? That's important. How do we remodel existing facilities, not just for health and safety, but also because the needs exist at that school, just because of age, just like the age of your home. We also know that we have to replace technology. We need a robust environment for our kids, but also furniture and equipment. As we're learning, that's important for our students in that learning environment. So what does that look like? And then the last thing that we're also thinking about is how do we make sure that that school, if we're remodeling at that time, is ready for the future? Does it have enough? Well, we don't know what the future is always going to look like, but do we have enough access, power, electricity, space, area, so that when that project comes in the future that we don't know about right now, we have the ability to look at. So our team looks at that on a regular basis and prepares for that. This is a slide, and we brought it to you last year. It's just important. Like right now, we are working on 8 of our campuses as we're repurposing and reimagining those. We have over 40 either schools or campuses or facilities that we still are working on an assessment and coming up with our key performance indicators. That's what KPI stands for. And so what does that look like to finish off the existing bond that we have and then to prepare for the future as we're starting to do that? And then the last one is really looking at replacement campuses. As you know, we're replacing Galveston Elementary. It's one of our oldest. Hartford, we're in the process of doing architectural design for, as the board approved that. And then what are our other campuses that we potentially might need to replace? And if not, how do we remodel or we replace portions of those schools? Obviously, we can't replace all of our schools. It's very expensive to do, but how do we replace our schools that would cost more to renovate than to replace? And then how do we upgrade our certain facilities the best we can to make sure we meet the community's needs? All of that, there's a number of things that we take into consideration. Obviously, at the end, our governing board has to approve the process and approve what we're spending. But there's a lot of different steps. Our leadership is always involved with that. We use our demographic studies to determine where our students at and the needs that we have within those areas. We do an assessment planning, not only with our team, but again, the academic side really drives what we need to do at each of those schools. We try to engage our community, as we've done with Galveston and our 8 repurposing schools that we're working on right now. And then that strategic plan is still our guiding factor, right? We look at that strategic plan and what are we doing and what are our goals, where do we want to go, and as what we're doing with our facilities and our furniture and equipment meeting those goals that we have for our students. So anyways, there's a lot that goes into that piece when we're planning, and a lot of members on our team that are involved in that, again, with the direction from the board and our superintendent guiding us in that path. All right, what questions do you have for me?
Go ahead.
So in the new bond, it sounds like you're going to try in 2024 to get out. You know, I noticed you kind of separate these things into lump sums into general categories, okay? You know, for my experience and my background, we had very specific line items of what we were going to spend, you know, essentially a capital plan that weren't lump sums. I mean, very specific items. Can we get to a point so we know exactly what we want to do, understanding that things change, you may have to move stuff around, I understand that. But instead of just lump sums and putting $80 million here and $100 million here and $50 million there, a little more specificity so, you know, the people that are going to vote on this know what they're buying. Okay? Do you understand?
Absolutely. So you can go back to all of our voter pamphlets and see. We actually go out and talk about the list. We start just like we have, and it's actually looked the same every single almost election. We come up with our list of what our needs are, and it starts with the Excel list that we continue to use and then track. And we always put it into those lump sum categories. So you can go back to every single election we have. We do go over what we believe we're going to spend in those areas, and we present that. We also have a section of that details it a little bit more in the voter pamphlet and in the question section, so we do that. You can go through our voter pamphlets to look at that. But our history, we have always put them into those categories. Our attorney works with us on that. And then in those subsections, we talk about what we spend that on. So we do talk about HVAC, roofing, bathrooms, for example, fire panels, all those things. But those ultimately, we decide what those are, and then we can make a change within that category if we have an emergency or we need to make some change. We can change within 10% of a category, and that's important. Now, the governing board still approves those projects. As you know, we bring back each of those big GMPs and construction projects to you, so the board has the authority to look at that. And we can never expend more than 10% of the overall bond in a line item. So you have to spend within those categories.
So if we get out to the public as much detail as we possibly can about what we plan to spend these bond dollars on, I think it's going to be very, very helpful. But if it's kind of vague in all that, I think we're going to have some problems. Okay?
Sure.
All right,
We'll
thank
do
you.
our best to do that. In the past, we try to go out to every presentation we can. If it's chambers and we talk about the schools, we talk about the different areas, our facilities. We try to get out to our Rotary clubs. We go out to all of our schools. We try to get out to as many parent meetings. So we'll try to do our best, again, doing that to educate the community as best as possible. We also hold typically a bond, it's a luncheon or a breakfast, and we go over all the projects, explain why we're doing it, and we allow them to ask questions for some of our stakeholders and influencers in the community, some of our city council members, our mayor, business officials, parents, and we let them ask questions too.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? All right, well, if we don't have anything else for now, we have a foreign exchange student reception. I think it's in the lobby for right now, right? And then we'll come back at 7 o'clock and begin our regular board meeting. Thank you, everybody.